saw Wednesday afternoon. Wait. Was it Wednesday? Tuesday or Wednesday afternoon. Because I asked Bob. He was talking about a chick, and I said, which one? He said, the one in the book. Go look, take a look at it. And I said, where's it at? And he said, in the bedroom in the top left-hand drawer. In the bedroom on the top left-hand drawer. So when I opened it up, I noticed a black pair of socks there, and I said, which one? And he said, so and so and so. And I said, okay. And then I closed it, put it right back in the spot, and that's where it was at.
Oh, okay.
And that's John Carpenter during his interview for the murder of Bob Crane.
Again, lots of details. Oddly
Too
specific.
many details. Yeah. This is Jen.
This is Becky.
It's too close to home.
Welcome. For more pornography fun today, guys.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Here we go. Give it Becky my source material, which I'll talk about real quick.
Wow. They have like whole ass pictures of him in the bed dead.
Seriously. Yeah. Who Killed Bob Crane by John Hook. It does on his website, which is whobuiltkilledbobcrane.com. He has this along with some videos and stuff like that from the investigation. Couple stills from the pornos. Nothing too obviously clear, thank God. But he has, like, this guy really dedicated a lot of time to this. So again, Who Killed Bob Crane by John Hook with his website, whokilledbobcrane.com, Wikipedia, Bob Crane Life and Legacy, IMDb, crimelibrary.org, Los Angeles Times, and Fox 10 Phoenix. And last time, of course, we talked about Bob Crane, his pussy hound bestie John Carpenter, and their sexcapades that ended on a sour note of Bob's death. Today, I'm going to speak on the investigation and its subsequent cold status, the reopening, and new DNA evidence that was tested. Let's get into it.
Let's go.
On June 30th, 1978, the autopsy of Bob Crane would be conducted at by Maricopa County Medical Examiner Dr. Thomas Jarvis. I'm going to say Dr. Jarvis was lackluster in his job performance at best. He wrote down his height and weights wrong, which is like already. That's like not writing your name down on a test. Like, you get 5 points right there, dog.
Right?
So he also noticed a white flaky residue on Bob's thigh, in his pubic hair, and his abdomen.
Oh.
And they were like, oh, we need to collect that. It's obviously semen. And he was like, what's that going to prove? He got a piece of ass before he died? Sir, this isn't a criminal investigation. That's exactly what I'm trying to prove. Is if what happened before he died. Why would you not take that? But I digress. Police also had spoken to witnesses that Bob mentioned John was into quote unquote gay activities. And he wasn't like that. Although John had tried it once.
Oh.
And when he said, that's not for me, fam, he never tried it again. It's also wondered that the semen wasn't Bob's after all, but that maybe it was John's, having done so as a final fuck you or something post-mortem, which makes it even more fucked up.
And maybe he got off doing it.
Yeah. The examination revealed two parallel and horizontally oriented contused lacerations behind the left ear, about 1.5 inches long, and the blow caused the skull to indent 3/4 of an inch.
Yowza.
There was minimal aspiration of blood in the lungs, indicating that the initial blow essentially kept him unconscious and the second killed him. He went to sleep and just never woke up, basically, 2 weeks before he could even reach his 50th birthday. The morning after the autopsy at 7:19 a.m., John called the Scottsdale Police Department and spoke with Officer Richards to revise his statement that he had given the day before. He was telling them, remember, that he didn't call at 1 o'clock in the morning. He called at 2:45 a.m., really, after they had breakfast together. He also seemed to be attempting to extrude knowledge from Officer Richards to possibly see where they were at on their investigation and what they had found. He would say, well, I only know what you all in the news have told me, and then starts asking all sorts of questions like, was he shot? Was there a fight? Because, Bob don't fight. Finally,
okay.
Speaking of the possible suspect being male, that one of Bob's many flings was a married woman, and this guy that's local around town, his wife had been philandering with Bob, and maybe that guy had possibly killed him. Who knows? Next, John would try to get ahead of his suspicious phone calls the day of Bob's body was found, saying he heard that there's a possible robbery and he wanted Bobby Jr. to know that he was there if he needed anything, but that he never relayed anything to him in case he wasn't aware of the accident. Like, first of all, you called asking for Bob at multiple places. Nobody told you it was a robbery. Not a soul. Everyone kept saying it was an incident.
Yeah.
Your guilty is showing. Your guilty's hanging out.
Cover up your guilty.
Cover it up, you lackluster. This attempt to throw off the police trail did nothing but put a spotlight on himself. So they wanted to start piecing together what John had done leading up to the murder. And this starts at the Sunburst Hotel, where they discovered John had rented a Chrysler Cordoba 3 days prior to the murder and returned it at 8:30 a.m. the day of the murder. Carla Preston of the Sunburst Hotel stated that he had told her he mixed up his flight times, thinking he flew out at 11, only to realize what time he would be really arriving at LAX, and that his flight out was actually at 10. So he was like a whole hour off or something like that. And he's woefully behind and was definitely in a hurry. He originally had a limo set to pick him up. Such douchebaggery.
Oh, such douchebaggery.
Like, you aren't even the celebrity.
Exactly.
I can understand if you're a celebrity and you want to have this is what you've been working for, okay, boo-boo? You do your little limo.
Actually, I would think a celebrity would try to keep it more low-key and get like a Ford Fiesta so no one would recognize them.
You are a TV celebrity by proxy.
If I seen someone that looked like Jay-Z step out of a Ford Fiesta, I'd be like, well, it's not him. They're in a Ford Fiesta.
Yeah, exactly.
It can't be him.
It can't. I would never see JC in a Ford Fiesta, okay?
Exactly. Now, if it was a limo and I seen him step out, I would know it was him. So
absolutely.
And that's facts on facts.
Facts on facts on facts. And so with the change in time, his limo idea didn't work out and he had to catch a cab to the airport. He also mentioned there seemed to be issues with the vehicle and suggested that they have the mechanic look at the car before they rented it back out again. They discovered that the vehicle was at a local Chrysler dealership just 20 minutes away, so of course they made a fucking beeline there. It was parked in the back lot and it looked like it hadn't been washed yet, which was a good sign. The keys were in the ignition, so Officer Barry from the Scottsdale PD first took a look in the trunk. It was empty, and except for a light layer of dust on the spare tire, indicating it hadn't been touched in some time. The car had under 350 miles on it. It looked still very brand new with a clean interior, except for a streak of blood on the passenger door, 3 inches from the top, and some on the shoulder assembly of the front passenger seatbelt. This meant they needed to discover who had been in the vehicle and if any of them had bled. To me, if he did kill him and he did take the murder weapon and put it in his vehicle, which transferred blood, I would make sure that they were cleaning the vehicle after I used it.
Yeah.
The fact that he sat there and said, hey, you don't want to rent this out again, you want to have them take a look at it, halted them from cleaning it. Which is the dumbest fucking idea.
Well, that's the perk. Most criminals are dumb.
That's true. That's true. Back in 1978, they didn't have DNA testing, but they did have blood typing. So the first thing they did was find out that the blood type for the stain must be positive. It's one of the more rare blood types, and only 9% of the population is B positive. Did you know who had B positive blood?
Bobby.
Yep, Bobby Crane. Now came the task to developing a chain of custody, including blood types of the people who had handled the evidence. They discovered that the vehicle had broke down on the way to being fixed, which there's debate on if it was really broke down or if the guy just didn't want to really do what he was supposed to be doing or something along the lines. Something about a lazy worker. I digress. Between John's and the police's interactions with it, an Avis worker, a mechanic, and a tow truck driver had all been in the vehicle, but none of them reported an injury to cause blood on the interior of the vehicle. And to be double sure, they had them all blood typed, and none of them had type B blood, positive or negative. He said that, so they decided, well, let's see who rented it prior to him, just to make sure. And there was only one person who had rented it prior. It was a fella had rented it for like a few days to ferry family members back and forth from the airport to like a family event or something like that. And he said it was brand new when he got it, only a few miles, and he used it to ferry these members that he knew for a fact none of them had bled, none of them got cut, and he and his wife had given it a thorough looking over before turning it back into Avis. Which, I mean, I don't know if you're like me. When I turn a rental car, I do the same thing. And when I get a rental car, I take pictures of all the dings and dents and stuff like that because you ain't about to charge me, dog.
No, I don't do that, but you would think I would, but...
I've had it happen to me. That's why I'm like so obsessive. I don't like to lose my monies. Once I lose it once, it ain't ever happening again, dog.
I just really, really try to avoid rental cars if I can.
Yeah, that's true. That's also a good plan. He and his wife were AB positive and AB negative, respectively. He also relayed when he was interviewed again that none of his passengers had type B blood either.
What I really like is that it was the 70s. So he was like, I took a lot of people from the airport home and a lot of people back. And I can tell you nobody bled and nobody's B positive. And they were like, facts. And
facts
they went
on
with
facts
it.
on facts.
Because first of all, if I nicked my finger, I probably wouldn't tell everybody. I don't even know if I'd tell them when I was driving the car, just like, oh, and carry on. And I can tell you right now, I don't even know all the members of my immediate family's blood type.
No.
But he does.
Listen.
And that was a time when blood typing wasn't as frequently done.
No.
But the police were like, we got you, fam. We know that's truth.
I don't even know my blood type. I have to ask Jimmy because it's the same blood type as his. I have O positive blood.
But I like the way they're just like, so we knew.
But he knew.
That wouldn't stand up in court today.
Hell no, it wouldn't. They'd be like, how you know? Can you prove without a preponderance of doubt?
Exactly. But anyway, carry on.
John Carpenter agreed to have his blood drawn, and he had type A blood, which means that the only person technically would have been with type B blood to have ever been in that vehicle was Bob Crane.
Technically.
So based on
loosely technically.
Based on his autopsy as well.
I should have been a defense attorney.
Besides the obvious breakage to the brain, they had no cuts or injuries that would have caused blood to seep out of his body, apparently. Again, supposedly. And yes, you would have made an excellent... I don't know if you're like me. We love playing Clue, the board game. And you know who wins every fucking time?
Jennifer.
That's full fucking show. We played it last night and it got around and I won. And they were like, well, let's play again. I was like, well, I have to sit out or else I'm going to win again. I know me, dog. And Jimmy was like, you right, though. You right. And they are horrible at guessing. Horrible.
I'm not surprised.
So you know who to call.
I do.
Okay, so then they also had a blood spatter analysis done on the blood that was in the vehicle. And they said that it wouldn't have come from a nosebleed or cut because it wasn't drops. It was a smear, like it had come in contact, like a transfer. So
when someone has a nosebleed, they don't wipe it and could smear it on there, but whatever.
But whatever. But I digress.
Who
am I? Just a girl?
No way it could be a nosebleed because it didn't drip on there. It was smeared like it was off something.
Also, how many nosebleeds have you seen that really get like drippy?
Exactly. And what do people immediately do when they're nosebleeds? They put their hand up and try to stop it. Yeah.
And then you'll be putting your hand other places.
Yeah,
and what happens
looking around
then?
for a tissue and stuff.
Transfer.
Exactly.
Transfer.
But who am I?
Just a girl.
Doing a podcast.
With her best friend.
That's it. Carry on.
All this evidence and all this witness statements have been taken at the time. It was time to now question old Johnny. So they came in for an interview and it was recorded and transcribed to my delight. To get the interview, they flew to California to visit him at his apartment in Inglewood. Except he wasn't there.
Inglewood, always up to no good.
I knew you were ready something like that.
Carry on.
He had been hiding out, actually, at Richard Dawson since his return from Arizona. Like, homie knew you knew he was guilty.
Hiding out or on another fuck-a-spade. You know, out fucking around with Richard Dawson.
Oh, he was definitely hiding out.
Being a pussy hound.
His 20-year-old girlfriend, though, Rita, was at his apartment in Inglewood. She stated that he met her when she was much younger. But how much younger, dog? You 20.
Well, you know, that kind of thing wasn't frowned upon back then. You could marry a girl at 12.
For real. You popping out babies at 15. You didn't even get no damn TV show back in those days.
Mm-mm.
Nowadays, you got all TV shows and shit.
Mm-hmm.
Get boob jobs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
She had lived with him for years, even adopting his last name. I say adopt because they weren't married and couldn't get married because he was already married to his wife of 23 years, Diana. They had been separated since the 60s, but she had remained in the marital home in Torrance, California. Rita stated that John was visiting his mother some 70 miles away, but after getting him on the phone, they got him to come back to the apartment. He would give a rough timeline of events. On June 25th, around 5 p.m., Bob picks John up from the airport and drives him to the Sunburst Hotel. On the way, though, he shows the latest Polaroids of all the poon he had gotten since he had been in Scottsdale. And then that evening, they decided, let's go out and score some women, but they struck out. Next day, they went swimming at Bob's and hung out while watching, again, the homemade porno. I don't know about you, Becky, but I don't think there's ever been a pastime we've had together where we watched each other's home. First of all, we don't even make homemade porn.
First of all, stop lying. Tell the truth.
But, like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
That's
Like,
our favorite pastime. Stop lying.
do you hold hands? Like, I don't know what kind of activity this is.
It feels so awkward.
Very awkward. So, on Tuesday, they ran errands like groceries, dry cleaning, and stuff. And then John watched Bob play beginner's luck that night sitting at the VIP table. They went out after, and Carpenter would strike out, but Bob would go out dancing with his date, Carolyn Barr, as we talked about earlier. Wednesday, the night of the murder, John would actually get down to real work by visiting Dynatronics in Phoenix that day. John had already said at this point his business trips were like 10% work, 90% cruising for women. And he would charge his company a kai under the pretense of it being a work trip. So it was the point in the trip that he actually had to pretend to work.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So he took Bob with him, and they met the heads of the company, Frank Grabick and Ralph Terrell, for lunch. The two gentlemen would remark how uncomfortable the lunch made them feel, as most of it would be John and Bob talking about fucking women and homemade pornos, which aren't exactly business lunch topics.
God, I couldn't imagine like going to a work lunch with some professionals and they were all talking about that. I would be like,
You for real? Like, you fucking for real right now? Like, and you also have to know it's a tech company. So it's people like Jimmy and JJ.
yeah.
Who, aren't real social butterflies as is.
Well, I feel like they probably weren't real good at reading the room and knowing their audience.
No. I love that, like, both of them are like, I was super uncomfortable. Meanwhile, they just
kept on and kept on. Because it's like, you know.
I can see by your demeanor you want to hear more.
It's like you throw your line out a little bit, maybe make a little, you know, racy joke, see what the audience does. If they're like, oh, I got even better one for you, you're like, okay, let me put out a little bit more. And then you can like keep going. But, you know, the first time you're like, and then let me show you this Polaroid. I was fucking this girl and they're all just staring at you, blank stares, not saying anything.
Like,
then
they're
it's
just so fucking shy. Like, I can't even. Let me look for this line you have over here. None? No, none?
No.
You're shocked?
No
okay.
bites.
So, that night, John would attend beginner's luck again at the VIP table, and he would report everything as before, but fix his time discrepancies and state that the last time they spoke on the phone while Bob was in his undies editing a film, and that John would get to the airport himself. The officers asked John about him staying separately from Bob, despite him stating that he would visit Bob at all hours, day or night. He told him that he would stay separate as to not cramp his style, and that he would never stay overnight. Further, the officers asked if he would appear in Bob's tapes, and he said he had, but it had been a good while. Bobby Jr. would dispute this. He stated that during their long weekends, they would always stay together, and that his father had hinted in the weeks leading up to his death that he'd be distancing himself from John, and that he had become a nuisance and a hanger-on. John told detectives that the information about his porno hobby was in the press last year, and he believes Patty, Bob's estranged wife, had done it in retaliation. He decided to add another weird-ass nugget of knowledge that no one asked for, that Bob would pee after sex to prevent STDs. Good practice for UTIs.
But not
STDs. And two, it's very telling of the pre-AIDS pandemic mindset on communicable diseases, okay?
Mm-hmm.
They then decide to ask and see if John would fly back to Scottsdale for a recorded and formal interview at the Scottsdale police station, which he agrees. He loves talking, why not?
Pro tip alert. This is at the point where you say, I'm going to have to direct all further questions to my attorney.
That's what a smart person would do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the next day, they would record the interview in Arizona, and it was priceless, friends. Okay? Priceless. Of course, they have an attorney from the Maricopa County County Attorney's Office, as well as officers from Scottsdale. So
shit's getting real when they start bringing in attorneys and all these police. That's when it's time. That's your cue.
That's them getting prepared for trial.
Yeah, that's your cue to go ahead and lie up.
So they wanted to re-ask the questions that they did the day prior, as well as a few new interesting ones. And I'm sure this interview...
Does it really work if you pee? Do you not get STDs? Did they ask that?
You haven't got the clap not once?
Huh. All right, I have to try that.
You haven't got the Capone syphilis? No?
Not once?
TIL. So I'm sure this interview, having included the attorney, was the last stop before they brought charges his way. And he'd also been read his rights and confirmed he had read and understood those rights. So they go over the timeline as discussed before, and they ask questions about his video equipment in the sexcapades they would have had. This was most deaf an interview of the 70s. So Officer Borkenhagen said, so this trip was like 99% pleasure. And Carpenter said, yeah, 10%, right. Officer Turnoff said, did Bob know any black chicks? He went into, was he into, Carpenter, not into it, but he knows some. He knew, what did I tell you the girl's name was? I'll give you two names. One was the name of Burgundy, and Burgundy ran around with black chicks because I saw all the pictures. What? Why is this even in the interview?
That's what I was just wondering.
Why?
What is going on?
What? Bob's opinion on the race of his flings has nothing to do with the fact that he made homemade pornos and that he died.
Nothing.
Not a damn thing.
None. It should be there.
And then the quote from the beginning, was it Wednesday afternoon? Wait. Was it Wednesday, Tuesday, or Wednesday? He's talking about the sexcapade book. And it's just like so laissez-faire how he talks during this entire fucking interview. Like, he thinks he's in charge.
Of course.
And so, but basically kind of ended up, we'll come back to, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. All right. All in all, he played the investigation quite cool. And despite only buying him a one-way ticket to Arizona, they were not ready to arrest John quite yet. They had counted their chickens before they hatched, you know. While he traveled back to California, investigators were learning more about the dissension in their relationship in the weeks prior to Bob's death. As we talked about before, Bobby Jr. had spoke of his father's intent to break off the relationship, but also mentioned that he wasn't the type to make waves either, or like Jimmy and JJ. So it'd be like a soft breakup as possible. You know what I mean? 2 days prior to his death, Bob and John were seen at Bobby McGee's having a hushed and very tense argument. They tried to keep it down, but it still caught people's attention. Bob was pointedly speaking and looking at John while John sulked, looking away. People believe that was his soft breakup.
Doesn't all of this like contradict it? Like, he's non-confrontational and he really doesn't like to end relationships, but they were fighting so loud we all heard them.
Yeah.
Like,
everything in this contradicts the other.
Yeah, and y'all talk about he doesn't like to fight and everything, but yeah, he was yelling so loud on the phone with his wife he was going to lose his voice for the show. Like, make it make sense, people.
What is it? You can't have both.
You can't have both.
Or B. Now you feel how I feel.
Yeah.
Because, like, when you first look at this case at a glance and you take just a few of the facts, it seems like a slam dunk case, doesn't it? But when you really look at it,
yeah,
and how the statements interact with each other, is it? Is it though? So it would be 2 weeks after the first interview with John that the police would discover the blood type of the blood in the car. Because, of course, things took a lot of time, especially back in those days, because that shit was all handwritten.
Yeah.
They decided they needed to push for one more interview with John to see if they could finally crack him. This is in part to the county attorney's office wanting ironclad proof of John being the murderer. Everything at that point was circumstantial, and tensions between the police and county office at the time was strained at best. You see, there is an order signed that any major crimes that would happen in that area, a felony attorney from the county attorney's office would be required at the crime scene. And the police had not followed that in Bob's case. In fact, the attorney's office wasn't even aware that Bob Crane had died in their town until it hit the news.
An attorney had to be at the crime scene?
I mean, that's not uncommon. That's happened. Because think about it, they're
usually a defense attorney, though, right? Not like a
no, but you'll
police
have
attorneys?
You'll even have police attorneys there sometimes, depending on how important, because you want that to be a slam dunk case, and you know what they're going to be looking for as far as the proof. I'm not saying it's like 100% of the time this is something that happens, but it has happened.
Yeah. I didn't know it was required, I guess.
Oh, yeah. Well, in this case, they required it, but normally I would think it would be silly to do that, wouldn't it?
I know, like, a prosecutor's going to the crime scene to look because they're prosecuting this case and yada, yada, all that, but I didn't know it was required.
Seeing as they didn't find out until the news told them, they were a little bit off. On July 15th, Scottsdale police meet John and a deputy of the LAPD at the Lenox substation of the LA Police Department. Their interview would begin with winding the back of the clock to speak about John and Bob's time in Dallas prior to their time in Scottsdale. It was a trip where they bounced back and forth between Houston and Dallas. And of course, this was not for business unless your business is sex. He apparently loved H-Town, and John said he liked it better as a swinging town.
Ah.
This conversation on the girls in the Dallas and the swinging Houston goes round and round in a circle till Lieutenant Dean started to jump the gun a little bit by saying that being friends of Bob's for 12 years and having spent so much time with him, how was John so confused, and why wouldn't he help solve this crime pretty much? And no way did he say, you killed him at any point in time, just that they wanted to solve Bob's murder, in which John rebuffs him.
If I were ever being questioned, and first of all, I'd have an attorney, but let's just say for some reason I didn't, and they're like, why aren't you helping us solve it? I'd be like, because the last time I checked, fam, I didn't go to school to be a cop or an attorney, so I'm not exactly sure how I'm supposed to solve this, but you can stop with your little theatrics.
He's the last recording, Jimmy. I know.
I understand.
In Scottsdale.
This I understand.
And what do you think about that?
I think it's a great, but when you sit across from me and accuse me of killing my best friend, one of my best friends.
Well, I'm still thinking that you did.
All right, then fine. Then
In fact, I think I would be able to probably prove that you did.
Then fine. Then I'm not going to say another word.
Carpenter did this.
And with that, the interview was over. As soon as he pretty much pointedly said, like, dog, do you or do you not want to help us solve your best friend, quote unquote, murder? And he's like, you're going to sit here and accuse the audacity.
The audacity.
Audacity. So because he decided to go ahead and ask for an attorney and there wasn't anything that they could charge him with, according to the county attorneys, the case at that point goes cold. So you're wondering, like, how? What new DNA, what evidence were you talking about earlier, Jennifer? Well, let me tell you.
That was exactly what I've been waiting on.
So Barry Vassell was just a beat cop when Bob Crane was murdered, but being as they didn't have a homicide unit, beat cops doubled as crime scene techs. And Barry's one of the officers who collected some of the many pieces of evidence.
Totally makes sense.
Mm-hmm. While he would watch and try to solve the case over the years as his career progressed, he would become a Scottsdale PD homicide detective when they finally got a homicide division. It went nowhere till 1990 when Barry was at Maricopa County Attorney's Office on a different case. Deputy Attorney Myrna Parker suggested that Barry present what he knew on the case to the current prosecutors in office. You see, in 1988, Rick Bromley had won the county attorney election and had a tough on crime platform that promised to take on as many cases to court as for convictions as possible, even if the cases weren't slam dunks. After presenting the 80-something slides to the attorneys, Barry's police chief assigned him to work the case with the county's attorneys office to hopefully close the case and gain a conviction. At the same time, Phoenix detective Jim Raines would be brought onto the case. He had an impressive career of 21 years, and with the last 6 being in homicide. Between the two, they began a multi-year investigation starting from the beginning, dumping any preconceived notions or suspects in favor of letting the case lead them organically, which is really, truly a smart way to go.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys ever watched this. What's that with Kelly, Jimmy? Cold Justice. I love me some Cold Justice. And what does Kelly do? She starts at the scene of the crime. She does her reenactments. And we go and we take it from day one. We're not going to go by any notes. It's my girl, Kelly. Man, I would cry if I met that lady. She's such a wonderful person. So first things first was gathering all the evidence again. Weirdly, there were only 6 photos of John's car in evidence. So Jim took the reins to see if there were any others. And after months and months of searching, he found more. Turns out Arizona Department of Public Safety had overflow evidence. And the negatives, like overflow, like, we don't know what case this goes to, so just stick it in the box. We'll figure it out later. What? I guess that's a thing.
Okay. I feel like that's my junk drawer at home.
Yeah.
I don't have a place for this. Throw it in that drawer.
Except
It was the evidence junk drawer.
I'm okay with batteries being in the junk drawer, but maybe not DNA evidence.
You know.
Right? With 21 new pictures, they had a whole bunch of new evidence to look for. And as Raines looked over them, something jumped out to him. It was a small speck of what appeared to be human tissue. It was 1/16 of an inch, and it appeared to be a small cluster of reddish orange, what looked like salmon eggs, and appeared to have a thread or a hair in it. How was that missed? Well, after being...
And where was this again? I'm sorry. Where was this piece of tissue found?
Oh, inside the vehicle, in the pictures.
Oh, okay.
And so they just seen the pictures, not necessarily have this piece.
Yeah, because they missed it before, and it's been years, so it's probably not still there.
So Ron Little of the county attorney's office had picked up the photos and flicked through them. And he'd be like, this is a good one. This one ain't shit in this one. Ain't shit in this one. So all those ones that he deemed insignificant didn't make it into evidence. Well, these pictures did have something in them. When asked what he thought of it, Little said it was just a speck of nothing. And then Barry and Jim explained that the speck matched all the specks around the head of Bob Crane on the wall and the sheets. And not having the training, Little basically blew off legit evidence.
Womp, womp, womp.
When the chief medical examiner looked at the photograph, he said it appeared to be adipose tissue and a human hair follicle containing brown hair, but it was never collected. You see, Lieutenant Dean, we spoke of earlier, was called by Department of Public Safety and asked if Scottsdale PD intended on being present at the processing of the car, and he responded, nah, you guys know what you're doing.
Y'all got this.
This is a problem because the crime scene techs never saw the crime scene, so all the correlating evidence was missed and wasn't collected. So no, they didn't know what they were doing.
You know what I call that? Luck for John. Good luck for John.
Good luck for John Carpenter. So over the next 4 years, they interviewed everyone they could from the original witnesses. They had reviewed John's interviews and realized how badly they had handled the case due to not having the knowledge and experience of an actual homicide detective. Jim Raines said, quote, I went over the interviews 1,000 times. Ron Dean didn't have any idea how to interview anybody, and he let Carpenter lead the interview. That's the impression I got. Ron Dean just thought he knew what he was doing. He was too inexperienced in homicide to know that he didn't know what he was doing. Check.
They were like, so basically the gist is we really fucked this up, y'all.
You really fucked this up. When they received the case, they got 1,200 some odd pages. And by the time they took it to court, it had grown to a 9,000 page document.
With a whole bunch of repeats of, so this happened and we fucked it up because it should have this happened.
Despite efforts, no murder weapon was ever found. They had no clue what it was, they didn't even have a clue what it was. So they had a veteran police criminologist, Ray Geisel, review it for answers, like all the evidence. And he theorized that it was a tripod stand, given the impression of a neural knob. See, a neural knob is usually found on stands, like the microphone stands that we're on. So this thing right here is a neural knob. He would go on to test a theory with a tripod and a clay sculpture. After striking it, the sculpture displayed the same shaped wounds Bob had. Then the investigators started to review all the porn for tripods and discovered Bob owned 2, and the missing one was most definitely in Arizona. It had been filmed while Bob was getting down and dirty. So like it was happened to be in the background while he was balling a chick. After years of working on the case, they finally took the leap and arrested John on June 1st, 1992. They attempted to question him, for which he invoked his Miranda rights, and he would call his wife from jail and say, "Well, they finally got me." And like all inmate transfers and extraditions, they take time, and many places require that charges in their area be answered before extraditing to a new area, and that was the case here. Not long before his arrest for Bob's murder, he was arrested in 1989 for child molestation. The child he hurt was his girlfriend's child, and police initially thought the child was lying until their playmate opened up and said, no, he also did it to me. What the fuck? Being as the case was still open and active, they went to court where he took a plea deal with probation, and then in December 1992, he would finally be moved to Arizona to face the murder charges. John would make bail using his home as collateral, but after all the time in jail and all the charges, homie was broke and jobless, and he couldn't afford a legal team. So he ended up with a public defender, Stephen Avila. Stephen was a skilled attorney, but he had a secret weapon. Former Scottsdale PD officer Paula Casieta, who had been there the day they processed the crime scene and was also very aware of the issues and the contamination of the crime scene that day. Bum, bum, bum. So the trial took some time to get started, with the whole shebang of pre-trials and jury selections. But once they did, dude, it was a marathon of murder, sex, and porn. On September 12th, it would be day 1 of an 8-week trial. Opening statements saw prosecution paint the picture of John and Bob's relationship, starting with Bob getting main course women and John receiving the leftovers, if any at all, and his growing resentment and dissatisfaction with this. The prosecution would then go on to speak on the evidence of the blood spatter, Bob's rare blood type, the photo of the speck of the tissue. When the defense would begin their statements, they would say it was 32 hours since the vehicle had been released by John, and anything could have happened to it to have that blood show up. And that's true.
That is true.
Avila had also positioned doubt in the form of a human. I mean, he had many women, and sex can bring the devil out of people. So it could have been a jilted one-night stand, or even a jealous husband who would have the want and the ability to murder Bob.
Facts.
The trial would see every excruciating detail of the crime scene. Bob's body, the wound, the people around him, the places he visited. The semen on the body was spoken about by the defense, trying to state, Avi, he just got lady, so it means it has to be a lady killer.
Avi,
dog. The prosecution asked the medical examiner about it, to which he stated that bodies can sometimes release ejaculate after death, so it's not entirely possible that it was a woman at all, or even that he'd gotten laid. The prosecution's proof of the body tissue via photo, while damning, is useless without the actual tissue itself being tested. And Avila was able to get the medical examiner, Dr. Jarvis, to state that he couldn't absolutely positively identify it as human tissue.
Facts.
Facts on facts on facts. See, you already saw it. You saw this way back. The prosecution had brought John's son to the stand, who had not been close to his father nor seen him in several years, to speak on his anger issues and how John had taken karate to help control them. Finally, they showed a sex tape from their time in Dallas. The prosecution reasoned that the tape showed John's subservient behavior and how he received the cast-offs, as well as showing the possible murder weapon, the tripod, in the background. The defense said, well, this is putting John on trial for his hobbies and not the crime itself, and the two are wholly unrelated.
Facts.
And this was quite risky, because how the jury viewed the victim is very important. And should the victim also be judged by his hobbies? No, but it does not make the victim look much like a victim.
Right.
Yeah. And especially given the time period.
Oh, yeah. It was really frowned upon.
We real prudes up in that time. Despite warning the jury in court, it went over like a lead balloon. And the foreman later recalled, why did they even have to show the sex tape? Like, what did it have to do with anything? So eventually, after leaving for deliberations and deadlocking for quite some time, the jury made a decision, not guilty. Jurors said it was a tough case with all the instructions on what they could and could not consider. And have you served on a jury?
No, ma'am.
Have you seen a case?
What do you mean? Like, have you ever gone to jury duty?
Like, have you ever watched a court case?
Yeah, of course.
Like, so there's often times that when, like, the attorneys will speak and the judge decides, okay, well, this is not going to be admissible.
Yeah, and they're like, disregard what you just heard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of hard to unhear what you heard.
Have all this information that you've heard, and then you have instructions at the end of like, okay, so 90% of what you were told, pretend you didn't hear it.
And now make an informed decision.
The fuck were we doing for 8 weeks, dog?
Wasting my motherfucking time.
I need more money than what you about to pay. Jeez. So in this case, they felt only 10% of what they heard was what they were allowed to make their decision on. And they also stated that DNA evidence been provided linking had Diddy
what?
They also stated that had DNA evidence been provided linking the blood to John's car to Bob, they definitely would have found him guilty. The next 4 years, John would struggle. He would only be able to get work as a TV and electronics repairman, and he would die of a heart attack in his home in Torrance, California at the age of 70. His wife would call Maricopa County Attorney's Office afterwards and say, well, I hope you guys are satisfied. You killed him. He's dead.
They're like,
I was like,
thanks.
That is such a mean thing to do. Like, I feel like if Jimmy was to die prematurely,
it's somebody's fault.
It would be someone's fault, and I'm gonna have to call them and remind them daily.
She's gonna call the current general of the United States Army and let them know it's all their fault.
Are you satisfied? In 2002, all the evidence having been deemed improperly stored was recommended to be destroyed. The memo that this was written on was put in the box, however, and it was never destroyed.
How did they ever think they were going to get a conviction of anybody?
Dog, I have no clue because they stumble and stumble and stumble and stumble.
And continue to.
I mean,
yikes.
Fumbling. More than the Dallas Cowboys. Jesus.
First of all, I will leave this house right now.
Bob's personal effects were actually requested by his widow, Patty, after the trial. You know, the one he was divorcing. It included his glasses, all the pornography, all the pictures, even his day planner that had the blood still speckled on the pages because it was on the bedside table when he passed. While Bob's photos and films were kept from public for a very long time, he and Patty's son, Scotty, saw money signs and created a whole...
Oh, for sure.
He literally made a pay-per-view website, y'all.
I ain't even mad at him.
Now, it's no longer maintain your pervs, so don't even let... Okay? The reason I say it's not maintained is because that's what it says in the book. I didn't go and try to look, though.
So she, I don't know for sure. Y'all go look.
I did see images, and I'm going to tell you, the quality was awful. It looked like...
Did you Google Bob Crane porn and see if you could find any videos? Because
No.
I'll do it right now.
They had they had some that came up in the video from the author, and it was so blurry and just it's black and white film that you can barely see him dancing, and then you could see a woman sucking his dick. In which case, I have to say he did have an impressive dick as far as dicks are concerned, based off of what I could tell from a very, very, very blurry and degraded black and white film. And you know what? That legacy, I hope that keeps on living for him, you know? You seeing him?
Well,
there's not
Bob
many.
Crane porn videos on letmejerk.com. Sounds legit to me.
Listen, I hope JJ never looks at your history. He'd be like, okay, she getting turned on. I guess I better dress up as Colonel Hogan.
There's a whole lot. Now they all have little crossed out eyeballs on them, you know, and I'm not actually going to click them and open them because I don't need that to go into my algorithm.
Oh, too late. It's already there.
Probably.
As soon as you soon as Google hears someone say it near your phone, it's gonna be there, dog. Google said, "Wait, what? You like 1950s pornos?"
Got you, fam.
Say less. I got you.
Siri pops on. Got you, fam.
So eventually, John Hook, the author of my main source material, got his hooks into the case. Thank you. He had done an interview with Bobby Crane Jr. in 2012, and he got so entranced with the case and its details, he had decided to get involved. See, John Hook is actually a news anchor. And I did not realize that until the end. And I was like, oh, well, no wonder why this book reads the way it does. It is very much written by a news anchor, and he does have that news anchor projection and personality.
Vibe.
Yeah. So Bobby Jr.'s book was being released, and he was doing a press tour of it, which is why the interview even came along. Hook had realized it had been 20 years since the testing of the DNA at that point. So, and DNA technology had jumped leaps and bounds in improvement. So he said, why don't we give this a shot, guys? Let's do it again. So he called Bobby and he said, before I do this, okay, I want to make sure you're going to be cool with it, dog. Bobby was like, why would I not be cool? Please.
By all
Please
means.
spend your money, your TV money, and test his DNA for me. Will you? Thank you. Like, he even submitted
improperly
his DNA.
Collected, improperly stored, no chain of custody. Do it, fam.
Let's do it. Let's say.
It's not going to prove shit, but do it.
Hook began his exhaustive search for evidence, driving many Maricopa County and city of Scottsdale boy crazy. But he did. He found it. He found a box. He found a vial of blood taken from Bob, all intact, including the memo saying it needed to be destroyed. So, of course, he went through the boxes, sent the blood from the car's vinyl, and like the whole panel of vinyl had been cut out. So he sent that whole piece and everything else to get it tested again.
And drum roll.
Oh, I got last recording. This is the last recording.
For 30 years. Bob Crane's son, Bob Jr., is with us tonight. Rick Romley, the county attorney who prosecuted John Carpenter. Michael Lake was the foreman of the jury, and Barry Vassal, who investigated this case from Scottsdale PD for years. And we're also joined tonight by Stephen Avila, who is John Carpenter's attorney in Oakland, California tonight. Gentlemen, thank you for being with us. Several jurors have told me that if they had DNA in 1994 that proved that the blood in John Carpenter's rental car came from Bob Crane, they
This
would
is annoying as a regular TV show, isn't it?
No question about it. True, Michael? That's DNA
2 minutes and 4
testing
seconds. That's how long it takes. Get to it.
22 years later, we have retested those same samples from Carpenter's car at Bodie Cellmark Forensics using the latest DNA science, and this time around, we got a result. We got a result. And tonight, for the first time, we are revealing those results.
In case you aren't with us.
The DNA found on the door of John Carpenter's rental car is not from Bob Crane. The tests actually picked up 2 DNA profiles. A major contributor is from a man. His identity is unknown. Second DNA profile is a partial profile, too degraded to reach any conclusions. This is an explosive development. I think we all went into this expecting this was going to come back John Carpenter as the guilty man. Bob Crane's blood in your father's car. Case closed.
Shocking.
What do you make of this?
I'm shocked right now. There were always 2 people in my mind, John Carpenter or my stepmother, for different reasons.
John Carpenter and my stepmother for different reasons. So, does this say he's exonerated? No. It says one of the samples were too degraded, and the other one is just a male sample. Nobody to attach it to.
They should do some genetic genealogy and find out who that person is, because my money's on the wedding party.
Mm-hmm.
Some random ass motherfuckers.
John Hook, the news anchor, he actually wanted to see if he could get it put into CODIS, thinking, obviously, this is part of a crime. But
Why? Is it obviously part of a crime? Because there's a random blood in a car?
Well, the blood is evidence from the murder. The blood that was in the vehicle technically is apparently evidence.
But how did they know it came from the murder? It was in the car that John was driving.
Exactly.
It could be from anything, anywhere, anyhow.
Again. But
it's not evidence to be submitted to CODIS.
Right. Exactly. And that is perfect that you said that, because there are strict regulations allowed to see what can and cannot be put in CODIS to prevent police from fishing.
Exactly. Like, I couldn't just find a drop of blood on my car and be like, entered into CODIS now. It must have been someone trying to get into my car. They murdered someone outside of it.
Listen,
like,
where were you, bro? Like, if you had been there on day one, first of all, shit would have been solved.
Thank you.
Secondly, this confusion, gone. This is ridiculous. You saw 10 steps ahead. I really thought you were going to be more surprised during this, but you knew. You knew, girl. That's my girl. That's my G. That's my queen. She got that talent, dog. So anyways, this will always have to be done privately if it is ever going to be tested again. And then on top of that, like you just said and pointed out so perfectly, that
Thank you.
You can't prove without a shadow of the doubt that this is actually from or related to the crime.
I mean, the fact that it's not the victim's blood tells me it's not related to the crime. There were no other victims there. So how is a blood that doesn't match him related to the crime? Mm-hmm. I'm confused how that's even being, like, discussed.
Well, here's the thing that was very interesting to me. And that I don't think that enough people are paying attention to. They're so focused on the John Carpenter story. They're not paying attention to the stepmother. Like he said, I have always been suspicious of John and my stepmother. Now, the first thing was just like a week and a half before his death, in the midst of this crazy divorce I've been taking a year or so, Patty and Scotty showed up on the doorstep of the Scottsdale apartment that Bob Crane was renting or staying at, out of nowhere, for no reason. She wasn't dropping him off. There was no planned visit. It was just like out of nowhere. And Bobby Jr. thinks that she was casing the scene, figuring out where things were, where his room was, so that she could do that. And then here's another very interesting thing is that her blood type was the same as his. B, which is a very rare blood type. They did not, one of them is too degraded. Who's to say that she didn't hurt herself in the middle of hurting him, and the blood is from her, and maybe she used his vehicle to frame John Carpenter. There's thousands of possibilities here, right? Also, they were getting divorced, and she was only going to get like 50% of what she was going to get out of all his money. Well, if he dies before they divorce, what does she get? 100%. What's better than 50%? 100.
Why they talked multiple times and fought multiple times the night of his death. Like, he hung up, he went back, he called her again later, called again. I don't know about you, but I'm not going to keep calling the person that I'm divorcing and keep fighting with him. So what were y'all like? And that would make sense of her wanting to know where he was at and keeping track. Okay, he's here, when he's going to be there, when he's going to be alone. I mean, she even knew that he had already edited the film and was done.
Part of me wonders, like, what would have happened if that girl had not turned him down, would she have been murdered too? Possibly just by being there. Like, there's so many crazy things that are possible, and they have eliminated the ability to even
find any of that. Yeah,
because the evidence has always been so focused towards John Carpenter. So there was also no sign of struggle outside Bob in his bed, who was killed. So he possibly knew the killer, or more than likely knew the killer, or the killer had the key, or knew that Bob only liked to lock half his doors. Again, millions of possibilities. Was it a crime of anger in the moment by John Carpenter? An angry, estranged wife? A stranger? We don't know. And DNA advancements sound like very well give this case some more information, some more in the future. But do we think it'll ever be solved? I don't think so. And on top of that, like, the further you get away on a cold case, the more people move die, get dementia. Like,
Yeah.
your time's clicking and it's not looking good. Well, that's the story of the unsolved murder of Bob Crane.
That was fun.
I thought it was fun. I did not even know he had been murdered until it came up one day, and I was like, well,
Did not know either.
don't mind if I do find out all the sort of details.
Thanks for useless information in my brain that will stay forever.
And I even told Jimmy, I was like, in the book, first of all, the author of this book, he is such a nice fella. Bless your heart. Okay? But nothing was useful until the later half. And he is so fucking focused on John Carpenter being that he misses everything that would point him in any other direction.
It sounds like the same with the police department and everybody else. Because I was thinking early on when you were talking, how come nobody's even discussed what him and his ex were fighting about, soon to be ex? That's not even been brought up.
Mm-hmm. Just that they were fighting. And then, and it had to do...
fought multiple times that night, but nobody ever says what they were fighting about.
Nope.
Or anything. And I'm like, And if we're just being honest, the suspect pool is huge because he was bebopping around with everybody
all
under
over the motherfucking country.
And we all know bitches be crazy.
They are. Seriously, though, you have to watch Autofocus. It's really one of my favorite Greg Kinnear roles. It's hysterical. I don't know what makes me laugh so much is because he, as a person, came off very much like that quirky, funny dad type, like Jimmy and JJ. But in the reality, okay. I didn't know you was John Holmes over here. Son. Well, anyways, don't forget to find us on our socials, Instagram, Facebook, all that jazz. Check out our merch. Let us know your own Too Close to Home stories. Was your grandma bebopped by Bob Crane? I want to know. Did she show up in the photos? I'm sure it's not as romantic as Rose from Titanic when her granddaughter saw the photo. But yeah. I still want to know.
I do too.
I'm nosy. Don't forget to rate and subscribe on all our platforms, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, all that jazz. The more people that see us and listen to us, more likely we can take this bitch full time and on the road. Right? Listen, the first 100 people to give me $1 million will get a ride on my yacht for free.
Fucking stupid.
I know, I'm so dumb.
Because first of all, I don't know y'all, and you're not getting on there because it's in the water and you could drown me.
I don't know about you, but there is nothing more terrifying to me than the thought of the ocean and all the nothingness that is below you.
Well, first of all, I don't want to admit that in a public forum because then if somebody kidnaps me and murders me, they'll take me to my biggest fear. So I'm not afraid of that at all. That's like a dream.
I'm like, Natalie, please, somebody, Calgon, take me away.
Exactly. My biggest fear is laying in my bed and vegging out and watching TV all day. Don't ever do that to me.
Don't ever. You'll never find me in my bedroom, laying on my bed, scrolling mindlessly.
I'm too busy out in the middle of the vast nothingness of the ocean, my peace serenity.
Somewhere beyond the sea.
So if you want to kidnap me and torture me.
Waiting for me.
So if you want to kidnap and torture me, lock me in my room with snacks and treats and internet and all my streaming services. Torture.
It'll be excruciating.
Yes.
But you know what? It'll be across the bell.
Right?
Good for you.
Thank you.
Until next time.
Stay safe.
Keep your head on a swivel.
And don't bring it so close to home. You lock me in my room and force me to watch shows. It'll be awful.
Don't bring it so close to home that you bring your scrapbook of Polaroid porno on the road with you.
Please
I'm going to tell you, nobody wants to see it.
Every time Jennifer brings hers out, I'm like, stop, put it up. I don't want to see that shit.
Bye.
Fucking ridiculous.
If you enjoyed this episode of Too Close to Home, don't forget to rate and subscribe to us on most platforms. Follow us on our social media at Too Close Home Pod on Facebook, at Too Close Podcast on Instagram, or if you have your own Too Close to Home experience, shoot us your story at tooclosetohome@yahoo.com. Thanks for listening.